The next item of business on our agenda is the presentation of certificates of long-standing. This certificate indicates that an individual has been a member of the OAA for over 50 years. Truly remarkable achievement. We're pleased today to recognize the largest group ever in a given year. W. Paul Hughes, William P. Lett, Paul G. Martell, Victor Peter Palla, Grant Robertson, Sheldon D. Rosen. Unfortunately, Mr. Hughes, Mr. Martell, Mr. Palla, and Mr. Robinson could not join with us. However, I understand that Mr. Lett and Mr. Rosen are with us this evening. I'm going to move to the podium now and ask these outstanding individuals to come up and receive their certificate. Thank you. Almost read the wrong one. Excellent. There we go. Well, please come up here and join with me.
Long way up.
Meet you. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Sheldon D. Rosen, Bachelor of Architecture, OAA. Mr. Rosen graduated from the University of Toronto School of Architecture in 1961, where he received his Bachelor of Architecture. The SDR Group and its principal, Sheldon, is currently principal of the SDR Group, a firm which he is proud to state has been at the forefront of successful design and development projects both domestically and internationally for over 5 decades. Sheldon is a prime mover behind his own developments in Arizona, Florida, and Ontario, and has also been a prime architect responsible for development firms in Canada, including Olympia in York, Cadillac Fairview, Bramalea, and the Greenwind Group. Sheldon attributes his ability to read the emerging trends which resulted in development of first ever infill townhouse, residential projects, urban scale townhousing, historic conversions, and condo conversions. Some of Sheldon's more challenging projects include a historic conversion of the Olivet Church in Toronto to commercial use, and the first of its kind mixed-use building on 10 Bloor Street West, 110 Bloor Street West. Sheldon's conceptualization of the projects always brings a newly invigorated renaissance to their locations. Sheldon's recent development to the Chateau Royal, a 100-suite luxury condo on Mount Pleasant Road in Toronto, has recently been completed. Other developments include a 5-year Venetian resort in Scottsdale, Arizona, which has been the recipient of many awards for its design excellence than any other U.S. Southwestern property, and has received top rankings by Condo Nast magazine. Sheldon resides and works the majority of the time in the core of Toronto, where he is responsible for some of Yorkville's most interesting historic conversions and new buildings. Some of those projects include waterfront, Four Seasons residential projects, as well as urban-centered, mixed-use, commercial, and residential projects in Ontario and Quebec. Sheldon's combination of a creative eye for design and profound interest in the bottom line results in developments that have been the fuel propelling a vibrant career to this date. Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you very much. This is one of those awards that you get for just keeping on breathing. I remember hearing a commentary between a reporter and the late Ed Mirvish, who asked him after his 90th or 95th birthday, "What's your secret of getting so old?" And he said, "I just try to keep on breathing." So this is one of those things. I've been asked to say a couple of words, and I contemplated just saying a couple of words like thank you, but actually, with deference to some of the younger people in tonight's group, I thought I'd just tell a couple of anecdotes about the early days many decades ago and some of the things that happened, and I'll be brief. Shortly after graduation, I was working for a small architectural firm and had done a little house addition which had been published, which led somebody to call me and invite me to design a beautiful, large private house for him on an absolutely outstanding parcel of land, which was acres. It had rocks and trees and rivers, and it was absolutely fantastic. And what he said was, just use your own imagination. There are no restrictions, and I thought that was terrific. In the little architectural office I was working for, I was making about $50 a week, and here was a commission for this large, to-be beautiful house that was 3 or 4 years of salary all wrapped up, and so I quit my job and opened a little tiny studio in a garret on Avenue Road and produced this work, and it had to be handed in on some day, and I went to the printer just in time, and there was another job ahead of me, and I had to wait, but in those days, you could see the prints coming through. And so I was standing there watching this set of drawings coming through, and I think it was Jerry Markson. And it was a remarkably beautiful house. And I looked at it, and it was on the same site. Yes. I said, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" So I called the client, and I said, "Look, I've just had this experience, and I don't know what to make of it." And he said, "What was that?" And I told him. And he said, "Oh, well, I'm sorry that you saw that." And I said, "Well, just tell me what's going on here." And he said, "Well, it's a competition." And I said, "I don't recall you telling me it was a competition. You know, I've left my job, I've opened an office, I've spent money on furniture, and now you're telling me it's a competition." And he said, "Well, that's how it is, and I didn't want you to be distracted by being in a competition. Just do your best work." So I said that, "You know, I'm going to give you the drawings, but I don't want you to consider them because I'm not prepared to work for you." So that was lesson number one. Subsequent, the land was expropriated by the city and is now a park. And secondly, he called me a week later and gave me this enormous shopping center to do for real. So it worked out and we became lifelong friends. Second little story, if I'm not boring you too much, is there was a time when there was this notorious short mayor and a short building bylaw called the 45-foot height bylaw came into effect. And this corporate client called me and he said, "Listen, I've got this parcel on Bloor Street, and I've been stuck with it for years because I'm always behind the market by the time I get approvals, and I have an approval that I can't use, and there's this new bylaw. Can you help me?" "I will try." He said, "So here's the deal. I'm going broke with this land, so I want you to do these design drawings as reasonably as you possibly can. And when we get it approved and I build the building, you're the architect and you'll get full fee, whatever the architect's rate is." Anyway, we managed to take a building which couldn't be any higher than 45 feet without special approval, and we ended up getting something like 12 times density. The building's standing there, you heard about it. And it took a great deal of time and trouble in politicking, and you know what it is to get a rezoning, especially when it's a new bylaw. So the day came and the council approved the zoning and the design, and everybody was thrilled, and I was particularly, and I called him and I said, well, we've got your approval, when can we start the drawings? And he said, never. And I said, why is that? He said, because I sold the land yesterday, 1 minute after you got the approvals. Okay, that was a tough one. So then, on another interesting, and this will be my last anecdote, a gentleman who I'd never seen before, an English gentleman with a head of white hair and looked like a sergeant major, walked into my office one day and he said, I have an assignment for you, and you tell me if you can do it. And I said, what's that? He said, I am a consultant for a major Canadian steel company, which he named, and they have an opportunity to build a city of 35,000 people just outside of Tehran. And I said, yes. And he said, I'd like you to design the city. I said, yes, and how long do I have to do this? He said, you have to be in Tehran in 21 days with models, brochures. So I said, well, that's no challenge at all. So went to Collingwood and locked myself in my little cabin for about 4 or 5 days, came back to Toronto and had a virtual army of people designing and drawing and building models and renderings. And in those days, it wasn't like today, it was all hand done. Went to Tehran with my friend Ken, who had gotten me the job, and he is going to be the main man. He's going to do all the presenting, and it'll be him that talks to the Iranian parliament, which is the way the zoning worked over there. So comes the day that we're supposed to go to the parliament to present, and he doesn't turn up at my hotel door. So I go looking for him, and I find him in his room, literally half dead. He had poisoned himself with some kind of exotic food that he had eaten, and he couldn't open his eyes, let alone go to the parliament. So he says, you go and do it. I said, I'm not in that part of the business. I'm just like, a young architect. What do I know about talking to the Iranian parliament? He says, you'll do fine. So I went, and the presentation took 2 hours, and it was all one sentence and then translated by a translator for the same sentence, and I'm hoping to heaven that he's saying what I'm saying. And then at the end, it was a question period, and they asked me one question, and the question was, you've drawn a mosque next to the sports field, yes? Could you hear the tennis being played inside the mosque? Probably. Well then, could either the tennis court or the mosque be moved somewhere else? Yes. Okay then, Mr. Rosen, you're approved. And I said, what does that mean? He says, you can apply for a building permit. Really? So I'm thinking to myself, that took about 3 hours, and in Toronto it might take 15 years, to do the same thing. So I'm thrilled to death, and I go back and I wake up my friend Ken and I tell him he's approved, and he's thrilled, and we're both delirious, like who would believe such a thing? Next morning, one of the parliamentarians who was in the scene arrives at my door, and he says, I'm taking you to breakfast. And I said, okay, and we're at breakfast, and he says, you can apply for your building permit tomorrow. I said, yes, that's fantastic. He said, how long will it take you to draw the drawings? I said, I don't know, 6 months. He said, okay, that's fine. He says, but it'll take you years to get through the building permit process. I said, why is that? He says, because you need somebody to shepherd you to go through it. And I said, and that would be you. And he said, that would be me. And I said, well, that's very kind of you. Is there anything else I should know? He says, yes, you need to write me a check in advance for $5 million. So, okay, I said, came back to Canada and spoke to the client. The client said, you gotta be kidding me, we would never do that, and so that was the end of that project. And then they wouldn't pay my bill. So those were 3 little things that started off an architectural career that has been challenging from end to end. I've loved every minute of it. I can't believe that 5 decades have gone by, and that doesn't even include 2 years when I was on a leave of absence, so it's really 52. And I thank the association for being there when it was needed and all of the wonderful things that they do. And thank you very, very much for listening to this. Thank you.
William P. Lett, Bachelor of Architecture, OAA, FRAIC. Mr. Lett graduated from the School of Architecture at the University of Toronto in 1958. As an architectural graduate, William worked in offices in Ottawa, San Francisco, laterally in the office of Ron Tom, working on the master planning and first group of buildings at the newly formed Trent University. Upon the completion of these buildings in 1968, William formed his own firm, William Lett Architects. In 1973, William entered into a partnership with Peter J. Smith, forming the firm Lett Smith Architects, a successful award-winning partnership of over 30 years. In 1995, William relocated to Peterborough and opened the Peterborough office of Lett Smith Architects. In 1998, his son, Bill Lett Jr., having graduated from the School of Architecture at the University of Toronto, joined the firm. In 2004, the Lett Smith partnership was amicably dissolved, and the Peterborough office then became Lett Smith Architects, Inc. In 2008, Bill Lett Jr. assumed control of the firm and continues as a busy practice carrying out projects throughout Ontario. Since moving to Peterborough in 1995, William has been active in community affairs and a supporter of the Trent Society of Architects. William has been involved as an architect with Peterborough, Riverview Park and Zoo, and currently sits on the advisory board for the zoo. Peterborough has a large stock of historically significant buildings, and in 2005, William was inducted into the Peterborough Pathway of Fame as acknowledgement of his contribution to architectural heritage in the community. His own home, built in 1885 in downtown Peterborough, has been lovingly restored and has received the Heritage Designation and commendation from the Peterborough Architectural Conservancy Advisory Committee. In 2012, William received the OAA Landmark Award for Ryerson Athletic Centre, built in 1985. William has been a member of the Ontario Association of Architects since 1963, and tonight's recognition marks the milestone of 50 years as a member of the association. William is also a member of the REIC, and in 1998 was inducted as a Fellow of the Institute. Congratulations.
Still standing.
Still standing. Would you like to say a few words?
Just a few.
Okay. Here, I'll hold that.
You hold
can
that?
focus.
Okay. I think Sheldon's a hard act to follow. I just want to thank the OAA and the OAA Council for recognizing how old I'm getting. 50 years is a long time. A lot of changes. Don't worry, I'm not going to go there. I just want to say that for all of those 50 years, 45 of them in private practice, the OAA has always been there as a resource to provide support and guidance when you needed it. It's always been nice to know that you're not out there all alone. Having a professional association is important, and I want to thank all those members who have volunteered their time and energy over the years to making the OAA work and be relevant. The members who get involved are your fellow practitioners, and they are the backbone of the association. I just want to say my thanks again to all of them and all of you. Thank you.
I'd like to take a moment to read the citations for those members who couldn't be with us here today. W. Paul Hughes, Bachelor of Architecture, OAA, OAQ, MRAIC. Mr. Hughes graduated from McGill University in 1956. He later joined the OAQ in 1958, followed by the OAA in 1963. As a young architectural student, William was influenced by Gordon McKinley, Weber, John Bland, Stuart Wilson, and in particular, Arthur Linsmer. In his undergraduate years, William was given a scholarship in the Design Build program, organized by Howard Fisher. As part of the program, William traveled to Chicago, where he had the opportunity to meet Frank Lloyd Wright, Mies van der Rohe, and Walter Gropius, giants who inspired him. Upon graduation, William partnered with Philip Goldfellow and was engaged in the design of country homes, churches, schools, light industrial projects. The highlight of these projects for William was Expo 67, where he was responsible for the design and construction of the Burmese and Thai pavilions and the British pub. This was a successful venture that led to other projects, including the formation of a company designed to establish a line of pubs in Montreal, Quebec City, and ultimately Boston, which became famous for the TV show Cheers. It remains as a popular tourist attraction to this present day. In addition to William's career, he's also been involved in the Young Liberals Association of the town of Mount Royal, where he held the position of president and was involved in the nomination and election of former Prime Minister Trudeau. During this time, William developed a love of skiing and became director of 3 different schools in the Laurentians. In the early 70s, William moved to Toronto, where he took on the role of chief architect for Marshall Macklin Monahan. A year later, William went on to establish the Toronto office of ARCOP Group. William was responsible here for a wide range of national and international projects, such as the conceptual design of the Halifax and Dartmouth waterfronts. On the international front, William's contracts included the award-winning Hong Kong Exhibition and Trade Center, the Islamic Library in Saudi Arabia, and an urban planning on Victoria Island in Lagos and in Nigeria. In the mid-1970s, ARCOP Group expanded, opening an office in Florida, where the firm was responsible for the design of many theaters. During that period, William prepared a design concept for the development of a 5,000-acre resort, winning government approval as a Florida quality development and the first development to be awarded this designation. William and Ron Tom established a joint venture office in Vancouver in the 1980s. During this time, William was responsible for the redesign of the Fraser Valley Hemlock Ski Resort, planning and design of the Revelstoke Ski Resort, and William was also a member of the team that prepared design concepts for the alpine skiing events of the 1988 Calgary Olympics. As of recent times, William, with Allcorp Toronto, has focused on tourism and hotel resort development. Projects include a master plan for the Trinidad Tobago tourism, design of 5 hotels in Barcelona, and a cruise ship welcome center in Grenada, to mention a few. When William's not busy practicing his love of architecture, he enjoys aerobatic flying, sailing, watercoloring, skiing, tennis, and the restoration of mahogany boats. William is also a member of the committee responsible developed a community plan for the Gunashee area of Georgian Bay. His membership also extends to the Arts and Letters Club, Badminton and Racquet Club, International Churchill Society, Antique and Classic Boat Society, Canadian Ski Instructors Alliance, and the Ski Club Arlberg. Congratulations. Paul G. Martell, Bachelor of Architecture, OAA, FRAIC. Mr. Martell graduated from the University of Toronto in 1961. Paul later received his license with the OAA in June 28, 1963, and has been practicing now for over 50 years. Upon graduation, Paul worked with several firms, including Henry Fleece, Architect, Ron Tom, Architect, Mathers and Haldenby, Architects. Paul moved on and began his sole proprietorship in 1974. Some of Paul's professional projects include private dwellings, landscape design, barrier-free buildings, audits, schematic design, and master planning. In addition, Paul has also had experience in the areas of senior citizen housing, nonprofit community housing, and corporate commercial projects which have a focus on restoration, accessibility, and adaptive reuse. Paul shared his favorite project with me, which was the Elmwood Spa and Banquet Garden at 18 Elm Street in Toronto, which won a design award in 1986 for renewal from the Architectural Conservancy of Toronto. In 2007, Paul was nominated by Nadine and David Nowen for the Jane Jacobs Prize. Paul has a special interest in accessibility and barrier-free access and has shared his interest through the annual seminar held at Calumet College, York University, on barrier-free design. Paul has also given a series of illustrated lectures over the past 5 years at the Life Institute School of Continuing Education at Ryerson University on architecture and the environment. Included as a part of these lectures were 5 on the bridges of Toronto, which included a lecture on Michael Ondaatje's novel In the Skin of a Lion about the building of the Bloor Viaduct. I'm proud to note that Paul has served as a volunteer with the OAA as a member of the Complaints Committee for 3 years, as well as 5 years with the Discipline Committee. Paul was also nominated as a fellow to the Royal Architecture Institute of Canada in 1998. Paul has resided in the Annex area of Toronto since the 1950s, and during those years has been active in community affairs and issues. He served 3 terms as chair of the Annex Residents Association, chair of the Tattle Creek Park Renewal Initiative during that period of 2004 to 2010, involving the community in establishing guidelines and principles for park renewal. Paul was also co-founder and member of the Ecology Park Working Group in 2001, which has designed, planned, and maintained the park for the past 12 years with native plants. Paul's volunteer work extended to serving as a member of the University of Toronto Community Liaison Committee from 2000 to 2012. He also led community opposition to an inappropriately scaled 7-story condo development in the Annex, leading to a negotiation of lower-rise solution accepted by the community and the developer. Congratulations, Paul G. Martell. Victor Pita Pala, Bachelor of Architecture, OAA. Mr. Pala was born in northwestern Ontario in the town of Fort Francis. Victor indicated to me that his school guidance counselor suggested he pursue a career in architecture Since he did not have a great job of drafting a birdhouse in shop class, the lines were clean and straight. So Victor found a brochure on architecture which said that architects make a good salary and their work days are 9 to 5 with light weekends. Things, of course, did not quite end up that way. He graduated from the University of Manitoba School of Architecture in 1960, where he received his Bachelor of Architecture. Victor has been a registered architect in Ontario for over 50 years, receiving his license with the OAA on January 24, 1963. Victor started working in Regina, Saskatchewan, but after experiencing one of the coldest winters for his life, he and his wife packed up and moved as far south as Canada would take him, ending up in Niagara Falls, Ontario. A year later, when Victor was in Hamilton, he made a decision to open up his own practice, Victor P. Palla Architect Limited, in 1965. The majority of Victor's work involved renovations, housing, fire stations, nursing homes, and maybe a couple birdhouses. Today, Victor is still active and resides in Hamilton. Congratulations, Victor Peter Palla. The last one. Mr. Grant Robertson, Bachelor of Architecture, OAA. Mr. Robinson was born in Halliburton and graduated from the University of Toronto School of Architecture in 1961, where he received his Bachelor of Architecture. Grant has been a registered architect in Ontario for over 50 years, receiving his license with the OAA May 10, 1963. Just prior to graduation, Grant worked as a junior architectural graduate with Boygan Associates. After graduation in 1961, Grant took some time off and spent 6 months traveling across Europe. Upon returning from his travels up until 1992, Grant worked with several firms during that period. In 1993, Grant opened his own sole practitioner. Get some more water. His sole firm, Grant Robertson Architect in Cobourg. Grant later changed the name of the firm to Robertson Architects and Associates and opened an office in Ottawa. Later in 2002, Grant once again changed the name of the firm to Robertson Martin, Inc. Member of the firm, in addition to him, is Danica Robertson, Robert Martin, and Greg Robertson. The majority of Grant's experience with other firms was mainly commercial. In his own practice, Grant has been involved in residential projects as well as federal, provincial, municipal, and educational ventures. Grant enjoyed traveling throughout the years with his family and continues to travel with his wife. He has visited most of the countries within Europe and covered most of the continents with the exception of Australia. Grant hobbies include reading, gardening, making wine, keen interest in health and physical fitness. Congratulations, Grant Robertson.